Welcome to episode 14 of the Silver Savage podcast. This episode is brought to you by Masada Tactical, the only place to learn authentic Israeli-based tactics in Maryland and its surrounding areas. All classes are taught by graduates of Israeli and American Special Operations and Combat Units and sworn law enforcement officers. Masada Tactical has classes for tactical operators as well as civilians who just want to get in better shape while learning how to protect themselves and their loved ones. Visit training.masadatactical.com for a list of all our classes and seminars. Use the code SILVERSAVAGE10 for 10% off when you sign up for a class. This episode is also brought to you by the only apparel brand we recommend and the only one we use ourselves, Combat Iron Apparel. As always, while I'm recording this intro, I am wearing their silkies and their long sleeve hooded t-shirt and feel absolutely amazing. If you want to check them out, go to their website combatironapparel.com and use the code SILVERSAVAGE10 to get 10% off your next purchase. As I'm recording this podcast, I'm actually staring at a book I received last night highlighting many of the unique aspects of martial artists, and the book includes both Steve and my personal stories, among many other martial artists. The guest on our show today is Lawrence Kane, who is one of the two authors of the book, Martial Arts in Your Life, The Story of Us, What We Do and Why. Lawrence has a bunch of acronyms after his name, including COP-GOV, CSP, CSMP, CIAP, which I don't know what many of them means, but I'm sure it makes him very important. And he was also inducted into the Six Sourcing Supernova Hall of Fame in 2018 for pioneering leadership in strategic sourcing, procurement, supplier innovation, and digital transformation. He has been studying and teaching martial arts since 1970, often putting what he learned into practice while working security part-time. He is a best-selling author of several books and has been interviewed on many shows including on Fox, Computerworld, Forbes, Art of Procurement, Police Magazine, and more. Here's a talk with Lawrence Kane. We got in the habit of hitting record before we even start, just to capture all the little nuggets that happened before you started podcast.
Okay.
Well, let me change this view. There we go. Now we can see all of you and your the baby grand in the back.
It's fake. It's a digital image.
You know what? It works. All right.
Yeah, that was the first digital image that popped up in the background. So it's not the one I usually use, but
is it really a digital image? It looks like you live in a freaking mansion with a baby grand in the back, and well, I gotta start publishing more.
I've got I've got a green screen, so I can make the background anything I feel like.
Okay. Very cool. Awesome. So I don't think that you and Steve actually conversed.
Not formally, no.
Yeah, nice to meet you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I will start by saying that Lawrence, I mean, we were contacts on LinkedIn, I think, for a little bit, but not realizing it. And it wasn't until I posted an image of the book that Steve gave me, Musashi's
Dakota.
Sorry.
Yeah, that one.
Yep. He gave me a copy, and actually we were studying it together. And I posted one morning a picture of me with the book and a cup of coffee, and Lawrence messaged me. He goes, "I hope you're enjoying the book. I wrote it."
That's awesome.
Yeah, and
thanks.
And we stayed in touch. And Lawrence, before we get into some of the stuff that we've been doing and so forth, how about you tell some of our listeners like a brief history of who you are and how you got into writing these martial arts books?
Sure. So I am one of those people that doesn't really fit in a box very well. I've had a very long corporate career in strategic sourcing and procurement. I'm actually in the Hall of Fame. Shockingly, there is one for such stuff. But I've also been a martial artist for 48 years. I did security part-time for 26 years. And I've done all sorts of eclectic stuff. Like for anyone who's watched Forged in Fire, I actually learned how to make swords and knives and stuff at one point in time, and armor as far as that goes. So I've done some really weird eclectic stuff, which kind of all coalesced into about a year before my black belt test. In karate, my instructor said, "Hey, I want you to write a thesis and bring it to the test." I'm like, wow, a year thesis. Okay. So I show up at this test with a 140-page document, and it was something that I was I taught at a technical college for 8 years part-time, and done a bunch of various things, and I found that teaching martial arts is one of those things that the best martial arts instructors tend to be the worst teacher. They're really great at martial arts, but they're horrible teachers. So I did this big thesis on like how to do that better. I show up at the test, and Chris is looking at me like, "What the hell is this?" And I go, "Well, it's the thesis you asked for." And he laughs and he goes, "Well, I meant like an 8-page, like a research paper." So I'm thinking, God, I'm an idiot. And about maybe a month or so later, we actually finally got done reading it. He goes, "Hey, this is really good. You got to get this published." I'm like, "Well, how do you do that?" Well, I don't know. Go figure it out. So, my instructor tells me I have to go do something, so therefore I must do it. So a couple of there's 4 publishers who had done most of the books I did my research on. And so I sent a letter to 4 of them. 2 of them made me an offer. One of them ended up, I accepted, and that was my first book. And, like fast forward a year and a half or so, and I get a call from the publisher because the book's been out for about, 4 or 5 months. And he goes, "So what's your next one going to be?" I'm like, "Next one? I didn't even mean to write a first one." And there's 21 since then. So I've got 22 total books published, all based on a misunderstanding.
That's always how the best stories go. Let me ask you something, because you mentioned your instructor's name is Chris, and I know you write your books with a guy named Chris. Is it the same person?
Yeah, same guy. So actually, that's the way we started collaborating together. Is the second book. The first one's called Martial Arts Instruction, and is it's very academic. It's useful, but it's the worst written thing I've ever done. And so the second one, a lot of folks who've seen traditional martial arts, you've seen karate or various Asian sort of styles. You see they have something called kata, or forms of various types, taekwondo and karate and even kung fu, tai chi, whatever. And it looks like people dancing around in their underwear, so to speak, right? Because we're wearing gis, which is traditionally underwear. And
is it really?
And so I mean, part of the reason they trained and stuff like that was just stuff you could trash around in and make it simple, right? It is pre-built systems and all that. But anyway, so Chris had been teaching this stuff that was really fascinating around martial arts. Actually, are the whole strategy and tactics are all based in the kata. And that's what makes it practical and makes it useful. It transcends languages and cultures. And it's just really powerful stuff that most people didn't understand. And the only person in those days who'd written anything about it at all was Ian Abernethy. So Chris is in the Martial Arts Masters Hall of Fame. Ian Abernethy is in the British Combat Association Hall of Fame. I mean, these are like really premier guys, right? And nobody else seemed to understand this stuff. It kind of gets back to that whole first comment about those who are really, really good don't teach well. Well, I learned from some Okinawan and Japanese instructors who never explained anything. Right. Well, Chris is the first guy who really connected well because he explained everything. Well, ultimately, I said, "Hey, I have this idea for a book. I don't feel qualified to write it. Would you be willing to work with me?" And he did. And that's The Way of Kata. And the funny part is we just got a fairly recent review on that where someone went, "Well, this is nothing new. Like, everybody knows this." Well, today, yes, because of what we did, right? But back in the, when we wrote this thing, I don't even remember when it was, like at least 15, 18 years ago, something like that. It was brand new. And so, it's been extremely well received. Like Kanshi Patrick McCarthy, who's just an insanely good practitioner and is a very robust research guy. Wrote just this glowing, I wish I'd written this myself kind of review of it. And so, that's the kind of thing where, when you sort of founded, an industry, so to speak, and everybody goes, "Well, of course that's how it works." You're like, "Hey, we made it." May not have gotten rich in the process, but I mean, I think that one sold close to 40,000 copies, 38,000 copies, something like that.
That's not too shabby. So let me ask you this, Lawrence. So when I posted that picture, you actually messaged me maybe a week later and said, that you and Chris are working on another book, The
Yep.
Martial Artist Next Door, that just published. And essentially you were collecting data from practitioners about the styles. Yeah, there we go. Martial arts
There
in
you
your
go.
life.
You mean this one?
Yeah, that one. I'm still waiting on my
Yeah.
copy. I'm just gonna say I was told I'm gonna be mailed one.
You are. I don't. That's the paperback. Well, here. This
That's
thing
a
is
big
a
book.
friggin' huge book, right? Well, the
Right.
hardcover one, which I don't have yet, and you're getting an autographed hardcover. Both of you guys are actually. You could probably use that for body armor. I mean, it's a serious tome. But anyway, sorry, I was bunny.
No, that's good. That's great. I'm glad you showed the image because I obviously don't have a copy yet. But so tell us a little bit about that specific book, because I remember the questionnaires that Steve and I received, and we were actually talking to each other. Hi, this is a lot more in depth than we thought this is going to be.
But I love the questions, though. One, they were organic, and it just made me realize basically the premise of your book of how important martial arts was to my life. At the time, it was something I was doing, but I didn't realize how it affected me. And I was telling BK too, I was like, man, my original Shihan's still alive and he's still teaching. And I know he doesn't really remember me, but I remember everything he told me and taught me and whatnot. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate hearing that. So this thing started probably like a decade ago. We're having some conversation, and Chris says, "Well, that's because martial artists are different." And there's various perturbations of that. Kept coming up. Well, yeah, martial arts are special. Martial arts are different. We think differently. Whatever. And we finally we have this process when we come up with a new book. It's kind of like a Hollywood pitch session. Usually Chris is the idea guy. And so he'll send something and go, hey, I have this idea. And he'll do a little elevator speech, and I'll go, yeah, or no, or whatever. On this one, it was like, well, hasn't somebody done that already? He's like, well, no, not that I know of. And so we did a quick little research and went, wow, nobody's done this before. Like, we all kind of get that there's something different about martial artists, but nobody knows what it is. And so we got the idea of doing a global survey. Obviously, it's only folks who could speak English and write English, so as global as we could do.
And they still accepted mine. Figured out.
Yeah, well, yeah, there you go. And we put a lot of thought into the questionnaire. Some of that was things where we had a baseline that we were able to do kind of a compare contrast. Some of it has to do with some hypotheses we had going in, some of which turned out to be we were right and some of which we were wrong. But we tried to do it in an order that didn't lead the witness too much. So it was getting as holistic of appraisal as we could and as in depth as people were willing to answer. And so that's where we had 40 questions plus some demographic stuff. I actually didn't think we'd publish all 40 questions. As it turned out, the answers to all of them were fascinating. So the end result is it's data, it's story, it's put together in an interesting and entertaining, I hope, way. So, we feature folks like you guys and tell your story, just some specific questions, not all of them. And then for every one of those 40 questions, there's some finding and a way to make it relevant to you or something that you can take away from it. And it was really just the whole, like, we think there's something unique about the way martial artists are wired. And actually there is. And it was really fascinating. I mean, some of the stuff I just assumed one thing and found something completely different. Others, it was kind of obvious. But I think if you really want to excel in the martial arts, whether you're just getting started or you've been there for a while, or you want to better connect with your instructors or your teacher, or your students if you're a teacher, or let's face it, if you've got a significant other who's a martial artist and you're not, this is a way to understand them.
Fair. I'll take it. What if I want to get my significant other into martial arts?
That it could help for that potentially. I mean, it really what I found is that people have to have a reason to do it. So for example, my wife's Filipino, and so she took our niece growing up because, like, everybody did. And once she came to America and whatnot, she's kind of stopped doing it. It just wasn't her thing anymore. My son was one of my karate students for a long time. Then he got into football, played football in college. He's now a certified strength and conditioning coach, personal trainer, and nutritionist. He runs a fitness company. He still boxes and some other things, but he doesn't do the karate that he did, when he was little. So it to me, it's kind of the what works for you, what resonates. I've done so many different various, martial arts and all kinds of, everything from like, I started in judo. I've done traditional Okinawan stuff. I've done modern close quarter combat stuff, just a eclectic variety of things that if I kind of stuck with any one of them, I'd probably be really good at it. But it was one of those, like, I just kept finding stuff, enjoying it, but it just wasn't something I really wanted to stick to. The only thing I've really stuck to for a super long time is the karate. And, but even that was more, I had a great instructor, and that's what resonated. So it's one of those things that somebody has to have a kind of an unmet need that can be solved through that. You know what I mean? And that'll get them into it. If they have the interest, the book will help them excel. But if they don't have the interest, it may not resonate.
Well, I am fortunate. My significant other actually is one of our instructors now, and she's really into it, so it's fun. Nice. I am looking forward to reading the book. Let me ask you this. So I'm just intrigued. If I had to, and I know it's probably a tough question because there's probably many, but if I had to ask you, what was one of the biggest surprises that you found out in the process of writing this book, what would you say that was?
Well, yeah, there's a ton. I guess one of them, because it's more empirical, is we use the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator to look at brain types of martial artists and compare them to the general population, and they are very dissimilar. Like there's very wide differences. So Myers-Briggs is probably one of the oldest and most tested ways of looking at brain chemistry and what your predilections might be as an individual. And there's a whole bunch of other things like Insight's Color Wheel and other versions of that. We picked that one because it's free. And there's paid versions too, but that way we're able to get data from everybody and not have them actually have to spend any money. And I've probably taken that, I don't know, 8 or 10 times. Started off as a corporate business thing where we're trying to understand the team better and be able to connect more readily. And ultimately, over I think it's been like 27, 28 years I've taken it. It's been very, very consistent. And I found other folks that have kind of thought the same way. Seems to be pretty good reflection of who you are as an individual and how you think. And there's a baseline they've had with millions of people who've gone through this thing that shows kind of what the general population are and what the percentages of each type are. And we were able to do a chart that overlays where the martial artists fit versus the general population. And there's some very distinct differences. And when you get into the analysis, they're actually meaningful differences. So we actually look at the world differently than kind of air quotes normal people do. And it's generally a good thing. But it explains like some of the frustrations I think that sometimes we have relating to people who don't. And so I'll give you a quick example. I was in negotiations. I negotiate contracts for a living. And we had a multi-billion-dollar deal, really, really big deal contract. And there was a session that just went badly and people were freaking out afterwards. And we're walking back from the conference room. This is face-to-face back in the, pre-pandemic days when you could do that. And we're walking back and one of my team members is like, how come you're so calm? I don't get it. And I'm like, well, nobody's trying to shoot me or stab me or punch me in the face. Like, what do I care? It's words. Like it's just a business deal. And it dawned on me, as we're walking back, because she had this, like her eyes got big, like, what the hell, dude? And it dawned on me that like I am used to very high, if you look at the scale of violence, right? I'm used to very high end stuff. And so words to me, like there's no meaning, but to other people, the worst thing that's ever happened to them is somebody, called them a bad name or whatever. They get that whole adrenal dump. They get the whole, the same thing that you would get in an actual critical incident just from talking. And, yes, your career is somewhat at risk by having the good outcome of negotiation, but nobody's trying to hurt you, and it's just a different way of processing, I guess. But part of it goes back to that MBTI and, what aspects of your, are kind of the chemistry behind what drives your thoughts and actions.
That's makes you kind of think how different would be society today if more people thought that way and didn't get offended by any little thing, right? So
yeah, I think it's huge. And think about like zero tolerance, right? When I was a kid, and thank God there was no internet or cell phone cams back in those days. But when I was a kid, I remember this kid named Tim, and he was, kind of the local bully in junior high. And we got in this big old knockdown, drag out fight, where the teachers actually stood around during recess and watched to make sure nobody like picked up a rock or something. But other than that, they're like, okay, guys, like, you got to get back to class now. I mean, that was kind of it. Like nobody cared. There's no zero tolerance policy. We beat the living crap out of each other probably 3, maybe 4 times. And then we ended up being best friends.
right.
And, today you can't do that. So you get these situations where everybody's being conditioned to go to an authority figure to solve their problem, which means you don't know how to win. You don't know how to lose gracefully. And I think I don't have data that for sure confirms it, but anecdotally and based on a little bit of research I've seen from folks like John Lott and others, I think the reason that school shootings, for example, are much higher is because of that dynamic, where you can't go in, beat each other up and be friends afterwards, because as soon as somebody throws a punch, you both get expelled. And that's a bad thing for society. I think it's well intended, but I think it's backfired.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite memes that I saw on this demonic internet, and I do agree with you. I think the internet is probably one of the worst thing ever. But one of my favorite memes that I've seen, it says, "Many of you today did not get punched in the face, and it shows."
Yeah.
I think as a society, if people had the proper perspective, we'd probably be in a very different place as human beings.
And you see sports that are, violent in nature in itself, traditionally like football or what, American footballs, in schools, and it's promoted. But you don't see martial arts programs in schools, and I've always argued, I think they'd be so beneficial for discipline, for physical fitness, mental health and well-being. There are some higher education institutions that'll have programs, but you never see it like generally, in a larger scale throughout the education system.
Yeah, not anymore. When I was in high school, we did judo, boxing, wrestling. And in fact, my PE instructor back then was the U.S. Olympic Greco-Roman wrestling coach. And we beat the living crap out of each other all the time. And I was a horrible boxer, by the way. I had taken judo, so I could beat a lot of the like we had a state championship football team, and so some of these guys were they weighed me by 100 pounds, and I could hold my own with them in judo. In boxing, I was a moving punching bag, and in wrestling, it was I could hold my own for a touch, and then just the strength would overcome. But it was it's really common back then, and we did weight training. Of course, almost everything we learned was incorrect nowadays. But this is also back in the days when almost every football coach would. That's what they were PE instructors full time. They weren't like somebody who teaches history and then does that as an extra assignment or whatever. And most of them were roided out. And so, these guys were big, strong, nutso, physical people that today would, probably get excommunicated from every school on the planet. But it was really good for us because we learned like in football, the whole point was, I'm going to teach you guys everything I can to try to get you to a college team. Now, y'all not going to make it, but that's the goal. Win or lose, don't really care. You're going to become better as people, and you're going to have the best chance you do for, whatever your physicality is to actually get to the next level. And the attitude was great. And I still remember one time there's this kid named Jamie, and he did something stupid. I don't remember what. And coach is like, okay, you're going to go run stairs in the bleachers until I get tired of watching you. And literally for an hour, he's running stairs the entire hour. And he looked like he's about to die at the end of it, because, we didn't drink water back then during practice, because that wasn't, that was a bad thing apparently, which obviously, most of what they did back then was stupid when it comes to the science of sports. But the fact that we were able to do stuff like that and people went through it, I think we were far better off because of it. And, able to get through other hardships later on. It's just like Outward Bound or anything that where you, push yourself to your physical limits and realize that there's actually more there.
It's right. And most law enforcement and military units, specifically when you get to the more specialized teams, do something very similar, because there's a lot of value in it, no doubt. Right.
Yeah.
And teaching the proper mindset. So let me ask you this, and I'm strictly playing devil's advocate, because I obviously believe in the benefit of martial arts and self-defense training, and specifically for people our age. And when I say our age, I mean 40s and older, right? But it's a question I like asking. A lot of our guests happen to be in martial arts, and it's an injury waiting to happen, right? So you sent us a quick bio of yourself, right? And you mentioned just a few of the concussions, I believe you mentioned. I know you had some other issues. So what is your recommendation, obviously as an avid martial artist, somebody that's been in the field for decades, for people in their 40s that would like to get into it, want to get the benefits out of it? Is it worth it?
I think it is, but you have to have an instructor who can handle the fact that you're not in your 20s, right? Not every instructor is great. In fact, a lot of them are bad. We sort of started off on that point. But if you find somebody that's good, I mean, you should have a good warm up so that you're less likely to damage yourself. You should have. I don't believe that martial arts classes should focus on fitness. I think you do that outside of class, because you can do that anywhere, but the martial arts stuff is in class. But there should be enough of a warm up and enough of stretching and things like that. You should know how to do it well enough that you're not going to get hurt. I haven't done judo in 24 years or something like that, because it hurts. And
I hate falling.
Yeah. It's falling's okay. It's the getting thrown really, really hard and then having a guy fall on you part that I especially don't like.
Gravity doesn't play nice.
Yeah, right. But I will say, like when I was a kid, I started in judo, and I had a situation where back in the old school days, I had a bike, and they had, unlike the way that I've ever seen them recently, the pedals had this little pin that actually attached it to the shaft. Well, I was biking along, and all of a sudden the pedal went dead. I looked down because that pin had fallen out, and like, oh, well, that's no good. Looked up, and there was a car. I hit the car, automatically just went into a judo roll over the hood onto the cement on the other side, bounced back up, and I didn't even have a scratch. Freaked the driver out. But learning how to fall right is really, really important. My instructor, Kenji Yamada, he's one of the guys who brought judo into America and made it popular. I mean, he's even had U.S. senators as students. He's passed on, but he founded the Seattle Dojo, and he was, according to many people, I was not there, but one of the stories is he was at a party. And the party they were at had a pool, outdoor Olympic-sized pool, which was empty. And he was quite drunk, fell into the deep end of the pool, and wasn't hurt. Now, I don't know how deep is a Olympic pool, like 14, 15 feet onto cement.
Yeah, 15.
I mean, whatever that is. Now, again, I wasn't there. Don't know if it's really true, but I've heard that story from multiple people, and I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the guy was in the 1952, I think it was, Olympics, 50, whatever, something. I mean, he's a badass dude, man. But knowing how to fall, really, really important, especially as you get older. But I've gravitated away from the grappling arts as I've gotten older to things that are slightly less painful. Yeah, as I said, as a guy who's, had my nose broken, had surgery in both knees, I could go on, but so it's all relative. But if you do it right, and you kind of let the limitations of your body keep you from doing anything stupid. There's pushing yourself and there's stupid, right? As long as it's pushing yourself and it doesn't cross that border into stupid, I think it's really, really valuable. In fact, it's probably more valuable as we get older than it is when you get younger. It's just a lot easier when you're younger.
I 100% agree. And we're fortunate to have a few members that are well into their 70s now, right? Mm-hmm. And we teach, we teach a version of Krav Maga, I would say, right? Israeli combat system. So a lot of aggression elements into it. And as you said, as long as the instructor can understand the limitations of an individual and work with them and not against them, I think the benefit far outweighs the potential negativity.
Yeah, I've never personally trained in Krav. Man, I can talk. I've never personally trained in Krav Maga, but a friend of mine who's a former Marine. I guess you're never really former, but no longer active duty Marine. His name is Frank, did that for years. I think he still does. And really impressive stuff. So, it looks, I think there's more than one version as I understand it, but he's with the lineage of, was it Emi Sidor or something like that? I pronounced that wrong. Yeah.
Emi Lichtenfeld. He just then changed.
Yes, him.
Name, Yep.
Right. That direct. So I think it's more of the military version of it than the civilianized version of it. But what I saw was very impressive. And he's also a guy who was regularly bench pressing 350. I deadlift 350. So,
if I have a person that weighs 350 on top of me that have to press off of me, we have bigger issues.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
So I agree with you. So you've seen a lot of styles out there, right? You've seen, as you said, traditional Okinawa, some grappling arts, and you obviously research a lot of them. If somebody, and again, I'm picking on our age group just because this podcast is designed for a certain demographic.
Yeah.
Where would you recommend they go and start looking? Obviously, you got to find the right instructor, the right school, no matter what style. But what direction would you point them to?
So I have a bit of a fondness for Okinawan karate. And the reason for that is pretty much every martial art has punching, kicking, throwing, grappling. Most have pressure points, whether it's much of a focus or not. There's just you get a wide variety of stuff that is very similar. And what I found with the really good, especially Okinawan styles, assuming it's being taught well, is that you get kind of the full meal deal, but it's maybe 60-70% striking, and then kind of a little bit less of the other stuff. So you're going to learn how to fall, you're going to learn how to throw, you're going to learn how to grapple. You're going to learn chokes, arm bars, all those kind of things, but it's not the majority of your time. And I think as you get older, it's easier to do things where the majority of your time people aren't harfing on your joints all day, and so that's a little bit of a kind of personal bias, but it really depends on what are you looking for. Like, I mean, if you're going to go in and, you want to learn personal self-defense, that's different than if you're looking for, spiritual enlightenment, or you're just looking to get in shape or whatever, right? There's this just massive range of things that martial arts are good for. And so it really depends what your goal is first. For example, if you're, in law enforcement or military, and you want additional training beyond what you're getting. I don't know if it's still true or not, but I had several friends in law enforcement, and the amount of training they got was just pitiful. I mean, like
minimal at best.
Tiny. Yeah. It was shocking.
It hasn't changed.
Okay. I mean, like for what I do, I get a couple 100 hours a year of training to keep in the top of my field in strategic sourcing and procurement, right? Most of the time people's lives aren't at stake. When you're an officer, they are. If you do things wrong, right?
It baffles me to this day. And I was an academy instructor for a while. And actually, it was BK who helped me implement a whole new system, which was very effective and very thorough. That's out the window now. I don't know what they do now. But, law enforcement in general puts an emphasis on firearms qualification. And, we have to qualify twice a year. And there's all these follow-on programs. But the majority of law enforcement officers will go the entire career without ever firing their weapon.
Yeah.
Yet we put hands on people every single day for the most part.
Yeah.
But we only get a very abbreviated defensive tactics in the training academy and almost no follow-on whatsoever. I know my agency, particularly the instructors, are trying to do a better job of offering it. But the problem is motivating the officers to come and do it.
Yeah.
Because it's always like, if you get hurt, it's not on us, and et cetera, and then the whole liability thing and whatnot. So.
Well, yeah, and it's not only do you go hands on a lot, but you also need to learn how to create witnesses while you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And very few people actually teach that component of it. So, like if that's where you're going, you want different training than, regular. Just as an example, when I worked at the stadium, we technically did not have arrest powers, but of course we're able to defend ourselves. I was involved in over 300 confrontations. I mean, I last counted 300. That included, knives and guns, and kind of down all the way to like people puking on each other. I mean, wide range. Probably half of those I was able to settle verbally and get people to knock it off, because guy in uniform looks important, yells at you, you realize something bad's happening, and you need to stop. Just as an example, so there was a situation, 78,000 people in the stands. This is in the East End Zone. A couple guys get into it, and kind of short version of the story, one of them pulls a knife on me. And instead of attacking him or trying to defend myself physically, I started laughing, and it froze him because it was not what he expected. And I'm like, dude, you see those two cops over there? There was two cops within about 25, 30 feet, but they had their backs to us because they were actually watching the game. They weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, but they were there at least. And he looks at him and goes, yeah. And I put that away before they shoot you. And he went, oh. And he did. And, so, I mean, I didn't have to go hands on. It could have been really serious. I mean, I've been, stabbed and slashed multiple times. It's not fun. And even by a not very sharp knife can actually do a lot of damage. In fact, the worst I ever got hurt was walking into a knife I was building, which I put on the lower bench instead of the upper bench, and just walked into it. Fortunately, I missed my femoral artery by about 1.5 inches. But I mean, there's actually a picture of the wound in one of the books I wrote, and it was nasty, man. I could feel it actually hit the bone through my thigh, and that hadn't been sharpened yet, and had blue painter's tape over it, and it still did that. So imagine what an actually sharpened knife that someone's actually tried to hurt you with will do. But in that particular instance, I didn't have to go in and do anything, right? And so the training and the awareness and all that was, or maybe I should rephrase that slightly. Awareness was most important part of what I was doing at the stadium. The hands-on was the least important part, because there were law enforcement officers who actually did have arrest powers, but there were many times when I had to do stuff. Things like, guy threw a punch, I stepped out of the way, and he literally threw himself down a flight of stairs. In fact, that one was actually especially funny because when he landed on the ground, he looks up at me and goes, "Damn, you hit hard, dude." And he was just so drunk, he didn't realize I never even touched him. I just got out of the way. So evasion, blending. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that I learned, in karate, which made me better when it got physical. But the most important thing was learning how to not make it get physical.
Right. That was my favorite. I'm sorry. That was my favorite saying to police recruits and other students. Like, you train to fight, so when the time comes, you don't have to.
Right.
Whether it's like you said, redirecting or de-escalating, whatever the situation may be. We master these arts so that we don't have to exert ourselves and hurt ourselves, etc.
And you got to get past a little bit of that instinctive. I don't know if you can you see this? I don't know if you can see it now, but right here, you see the scar there, kind of crosses 2.5 fingers.
And for purpose of the people that are listening and not actually watching this on YouTube, these are the fingers on your hand.
Yeah. There's you kind of, this one I could see still very clearly, and then you barely see it there, and you can't really see that one anymore. But that was guy stabbed at me, and I did it kind of a instinctive down block, open hand down block, which was a really, really bad idea. Hence the scar. But
you didn't get caught anywhere else, so that was good.
No, I didn't. Yes, it was just the one, and then I was able to make the threat go away. But that was a bad idea. So that also gets back into the point about awareness, right? From the stats I've read, a lot of times when people are attacked by a knife, they don't even know it's there until after they've been cut. In my case, in that particular instance, every time there's been one, I've noticed it. But in that particular instance, I just did a automatic reaction instead of, a response, which was not great, but,
or maybe
kept the worst thing from happening.
So just kind of tooting the horn of Krav Maga for a second, or Israeli combat system, which is what we teach, is we actually depend on that realistic or natural response to stress, right? That flinch or startle response.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a video that surfaced yesterday. This is being recorded on March 20th, so the video came out March 19th for people that are listening to it a couple of weeks down the road, of a knife attack in Jerusalem. And you can see the guy, the defendant, just flinching, startling, actually falling to the ground, doing a good job of assuming a defensive position and maintaining distance using his feet, which is something we teach in classes, because arguably, naturally, that's what very likely is going to happen. Let me pick on something you said a second ago. So I'm of the belief that the more you train, the better you train, the less you want to get in a fight. I always tell people, I'm like, I would like to think I'm pretty good at fighting. I've been learning martial arts since I was a young kid, all different styles. And obviously I was in the military, law enforcement. And I'll be the first one to admit there's no winner in a fight. There's the person that lost less. And I just don't want to be there if I can avoid it.
Yeah. 100%. In fact, that's actually one of the findings in the book. Martial artists study violence, but we're actually become less violent the more we know. And I like to phrase it as, and we got the data behind it, but I like to phrase it as the tougher you are, the less you should feel a need to prove it. Like when I was in college, because I was young and stupid, we used to go to hockey games to pick fights. And in fact, I actually bought rec specs because I couldn't afford to have my glasses broken so often. Okay, that was really dumb, but I didn't know I didn't know the consequences of it. Right?
You learn really fast.
The more I learned, the more I understood, the less I wanted to do any of that. Yep. And I think when you're, again, kind of circling back to the whole zero tolerance stuff, not learning those things, right? I mean, all the fights I'd been into up until probably my sophomore year in college were more pushy, shovey matches than an actual fight, right? I mean, nobody's really trying to kill each other. It was a social violence thing, just kind of comparing who's as big or kind of stuff, and it wasn't anything that was like serious or significant, or where somebody, if somebody got seriously hurt, it would have been an accident. And that's, I had the luxury of learning things that way. Not everybody does. I mean, the first time could be the last time if you don't do it right. So like you said, avoidance is far better. And if you can't avoid it, maybe you can de-escalate it. And so I'm really big on teaching people, kind of the lower end of the scale stuff. Rory Miller and I wrote a book called Scaling Force, which talks about the various levels. It's everything from doing nothing skillfully all the way up to homicide. And you want to be at that lower end where you're using your body language, you're using verbals or touch, all the things that are what most people would consider a fight, to make it go away. And more often than not, you can.
Right, 100% agreed. So Lawrence, let me ask you this: what are some things that you do now to kind of maintain that warrior mindset? So you don't do martial arts as much anymore, right?
Yeah, I've had some medical things, so I can't as much. But I do work out 3 days a week, and I hit the weights like I would be, an opponent, so to speak. I mean, I can hardly move at the end of the session. And in fact, I actually had to buy. I've got a Finnish style barrel sauna. It's a dry sauna that you can put the steam, pour water over the rocks. I use that a lot because otherwise I can't move. But so I really when I work out, I try to have it's not just a physical thing, it's a mental thing too. Right. I also try to do various kind of, call it visualization for lack of a better term, but things to I'll still do kata, things like that, and just stuff to kind of keep in the forefront. I mean, I live in Seattle, as you probably heard, like Chow's Chop, all the defund and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of dangerous here, way more than it ever used to be. And so I'm always keeping up, for example, my situational awareness. So I may go just for a drill, if I have to go to the mall, I might go look up on the, kind of stand up near the rail, look down across and just read people's body language and see, who's in a good mood, who's having a bad day, who's looking predatory, who's looking good victim, that sort of thing. And just use it to, to stay in touch with reading crowds, things like that. Just kind of keeping the mental acuity there. I can still physically fight if I had to. The problem is that, if I have to, I'm probably going to end up injuring myself in the process. So I'd really rather not. And so, again, awareness, avoidance, de-escalation, all that. But there's some mental aspects to it that kind of keep you sharp and keep you aware. The last thing I ever want to do is, be that oblivious guy that just stumbles into something bad. Right. And, so far, so good. I've never have been.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you bring the point of visualizing. I'm a big fan of playing the what if game. I tell people that, ideally I would like everybody to go to a dojo or to a gym and train daily and so forth. Realistically speaking, I know you won't. And there's at this point enough research supporting the fact that your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination. Right. So those neuromuscular connections are still established even by me just thinking about it. And yes. the analogy or the example I always use is athletes, when they're sidelined due to an injury and they just play their sport, they come back to play and they may actually be better than they were before because they got thousands of repetitions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Lawrence, I want to really thank you for taking the time on this Sunday on the weekend and joining us. Before I let you go, though, Steve has
gotta put you in the hot seat.
Yeah, we have a little tradition. So
little tradition, little trivia hot seat before you go.
Okay, sure.
Right? And tries to kind of direct it at the guest.
Yes,
so this is specifically for you.
Like a true martial arts competition. It's okay if we lose. If you get it wrong. All right. So I got 4 questions for you. 2 are martial arts based. 2 are martial arts movie based. So give you a little hint there. First one's pretty easy. So generally speaking, all right, what is the most popular martial art within the United States?
MMA.
No, it's Taekwondo.
Is it?
Okay. Taekwondo.
The sad part is I actually did the research in writing the book. We actually have that in there, and I didn't remember correctly.
So you got it right technically.
Steve, I've got
in my defense, I've had 8 concussions. Okay.
Yes. Hey, we'll take that into account. It's perfectly fine. So, all right. Second question. This is a hard one. I love history. Anything related to martial arts, military, and war. What is the oldest known martial art?
Pancration.
Who?
Pancration.
Pancration.
Maybe pronouncing it wrong.
Big. Yeah.
Alexander the Great. What
So this actually
was in the first Olympics.
Yeah.
In,
so this predates that.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yes.
What's that?
And that's it's from southern India. I can't pronounce it. Kalaripayattu, which is supposed to be the art of the battlefield, which is supposed to be the groundwork from everything from martial arts to yoga to you name it. And again, so it's it's one of those things that is recently being discovered, and more things, because it's so far back, there's not a lot of script on it and whatnot. So it's culturally.
I've never heard of that one. The oldest one I'm aware of was it was actually in the very first Olympics, so thousands of years ago. But
yes,
this must be older than that. Wow.
Yes, it predates.
I'm not doing very well in this.
That's okay.
Most of our guests not, because
nobody does.
Steve has the advantage of researching this before, and you just get
you're back in the deck.
Yes. Although Paul did kind of put me in the hot seat, and I got his questions kind of right, not being prepared. So, all right, 2 movie questions, martial arts movie questions. All right, and these are from our era, Silver Savage era. So,
all right,
to make it fair, what is Bruce Lee's most popular movie?
I'm going to guess Enter the Dragon. Actually,
yes, ding, 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 ding. You got it. Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
Enter the Dragon.
And
last but not least, the Karate Kid movies, when he does the crane kick, right?
And the original, not the Will Smith.
No. Not
the original one. Yeah, Ralph Macchio.
Yeah, Ralph Macchio. He does the crane kick on Johnny. Why do fans... And now looking back at it, say that was an illegal kick, which is actually, they use that as the basis for the new series now. But it was an illegal kick, even though he won that tournament. Anybody?
I'm guessing because it was point sparring, you're allowed to kick to the head. I don't know.
Yes, you got it.
Okay.
Correct. Ding, 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 ding. So, and it's funny because the referee, if you go back and look at the movie, he specifically says no kicking to the face. And Ralph Macchio kicks him in the face with the crane kick. And they use that. It's actually part of in the new series, Johnny says he beat me with an illegal kick. And it was playing off of what people were saying, that it was illegal. People who really nitpick movies, it's like martial artists watching a martial art movie. We're going to be like, well, you really can't do that or this and that. Just like when BK and I watch war movies, I'll notice every little nuance. Like, that's a 9mm shell casing coming out of a 5.56 weapon. That can't happen, kind of thing. So I do
the same thing. It makes it so hard to enjoy certain movies because it pulls you out of the fantasy. Because you're going like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Hey, not bad though. I think you've done the best so far. You got two out of 4. So.
Yeah, wow, okay. Cool.
Very good.
So you take away the bragging rights.
Nice.
All right, Lawrence, thank you so much for joining us. You stay safe.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Can't wait to read the book. I'm really excited about it.
Remind
the viewers,
Yes, before we let you go, that's the most important part. Where can people buy the book? Where can people follow you if they want more information about your other book?
And here's another one. I'll hold this one up.
Okay, well, here, let me grab it. Yeah, so this is the new, get that in front of the kid. Here's the new one, Martial Arts in Your Life. Masashi's Dakota up there, he's holding up. We also did a version of Art of War modernized called Shit Sun Tzu Said, which,
I'm going to write that down.
I like that title. The I is an exclamation
point. Is it the actual Art of War, though?
What's that?
Is it the actual Art of War? Is it your interpretation?
Yeah, it's the original 1910 translation of Art of War, and then every single one of the sections in there, we do a little like, what does this mean in what context, and then how can you use it? And there's a for the win and a you lose. So there's an actual takeaway for every single one of them. And I got to tell you, either there was a mistranslation or something, or Sun Tzu was the original department of redundancy, because he says the same thing multiple different. So we had to take that where he says the same thing over and over again and come up with different versions of what does this mean. It was actually kind of fun to write. A hell of a lot of work. I actually enjoyed writing Dakota better. But anyway, to answer the question, easiest thing is go to Amazon. You can Google me. I'm not the Lawrence Kane who's the Zodiac killer suspect. I'm the Lawrence Kane who's the author. Different middle initial. But if you go on Amazon, Lawrence A. Kane, you can find all of my books there. Some are only available in paper. So if you look at I think it takes you immediately to Kindle because they try to chum the Kindle version. Not everything's available on Kindle, but most books are softcover, Kindle, and the ones that sell really well have audiobooks as well. A couple of them have hardcover. So there you go. And I'm relatively easy to find. I'm also on LinkedIn. That's the only social media that I do. But I know at least most folks know what LinkedIn is, even if they don't use it actively.
And Lawrence, once we get our copies and we read the book, we'll have to have you back on and kind of do a after action report.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. According to the our overlords and masters at Amazon, who are I'm tracking the shipping through, I'm supposed to get the hard copies on March 26th, which means you should have yours within a week or so of then.
I'm curious if my segment of me swinging a trumpet at someone in junior high school made it in there.
It did, actually.
Yes, that was a turning point in my life.
Yeah, that was a great story. By the way, as you guys should know, the martial arts were featured was all bit. We actually took the names off, looked at the answers, took the best answers, and those are the people that we featured. So there's some Hall of Fame members who are not, who participated, but who weren't featured because their stories weren't as interesting. That's so cool. So there you go.
Well, it's definitely an honor. I'm really excited to be a part of this venture with you guys.
Thanks. I really appreciate your contribution. I will say, just for everybody who participated, I mean, you guys know how onerous that questionnaire was, and there's a lot. It took folks a lot of time to really give good answers, and I really appreciate everybody who did, because this was one of those things where initially it was like, this is a great idea, and then we're like waiting for people to respond and going, oh man, did we make this
how much whiskey I went through getting through that questionnaire. You opened up a lot of wounds and core memories, man.
The funny, you're not the only one who said that. In fact, I had one guy, good friend of mine, who called me up like halfway through and went, dude, I can't finish this. I'm literally getting flashbacks. And I'm like, hey, it's cool. I get it. So
PTS.
Yeah,
we'll definitely have you back on, Lawrence, for an after action report. I'm really excited to read it, and I still have to finish the Kodo, and I've already hit purchase on Shit Sun Tzu Said, so I'll be reading that too.
Cool. Well, let me know what you think when you get done with that. Appreciate it, and I'll get you guys copies as soon as I can. It's the I don't know what it is, man, but the shipping for hardcover is just ridiculously slow. I actually didn't even want the softcover one, but I had to buy one, so I had something I could show when I was on people's podcasts.
That's funny. So, we'll blame it on supply chain issues and on a war in the Ukraine.
Yeah. I blame Putin because why not? Everybody else.
Why the hell not? All right, guys. Have a great day.
Lawrence, have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Great talking with you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this latest episode of the Silver Savage podcast.